The wind danced across the Kurukshetra plains, kicking up dust that settled on the glinting armor of thousands. The sun blazed above like a divine eye, bearing silent witness to what was about to unfold. The silence, eerie, anticipatory, hung like a veil over the field. Suddenly, Bhishma's conch shattered that silence. The mighty roar, like a lion claiming its domain, echoed across the valley, sending ripples through the hearts of the Kaurava army. Duryodhan, standing near the chariot of Bhishma, clenched his fist. The old man hadn't lost his touch. That single note, deep, aged, fierce, rekindled the fire in Duryodhana's chest. Behind Bhishma's mighty call came a symphony of war kettle drums thundering, cow horns blaring, and tabors pounding with such fury that the very earth trembled beneath their beat. From the Pandava side, there was no fear, but there was pause. Yudhishthira stood still, his gaze fixed on the rising storm of sound. "It begins," he whispered, not to anyone in particular, but to the moment, to the dharma he must uphold. Arjuna adjusted the string of Gandiva. Krishna, beside him, simply watched. His eyes, infinite yet human, scanned the horizon as if he already knew what would come. The Kaurava army roared to life. Rows upon rows of chariots rolled forward. Elephants trumpeted, horses neighed and stomped, eager to charge. The soldiers, once motionless statues of discipline, became a living wave of anticipation. The sound was no longer a noise, it was a language of fury, of pride, of looming death. Drona stepped forward, eyes narrowed. Bhishma's call was not just a signal, it was a challenge. Karna, standing beside his charioteer, closed his eyes momentarily. And we must answer it. The kettle drums near the command tents pounded harder now, matching the racing heartbeats of every soul present. The cow horns screamed primal, ancient. Even the wind had changed. It no longer danced, it pushed. Sanjaya, witnessing this from afar through divine sight, described it to the blind king Dhritarashtra. His voice hushed with reverence. "My lord, the field sings with thunder. Your son's forces are alive. The eldest warrior has declared that the Kauravas will not kneel today." Dhritarashtra turned his face slightly. He couldn't see, but he could feel it. The vibrations, the fear, the pride, and the consequences. Krishna, still unmoved, smiled softly as he looked toward Bhishma's chariot. "Do you hear it, Parth?" he asked Arjuna. "I do," Arjuna replied. "They mean to shake us, to make us doubt." Krishna nodded. "It is not the loudness of the sound that wins a war, but the silence within." On the other side of the field, the Pandava troops began to murmur, not with fear, but with rising defiance. They were warriors, sons of kings, disciples of the finest teachers. They would not let sound shake their spine. Nakula mounted his horse, his face a stone mask. "Let them make noise, it will not protect them from the blade." Sahadeva tightened the straps on his arm guards. "It is only thunder before the lightning of battle." The conches continued to scream. The war drums grew wild, erratic as if trying to summon something more than fear. But the Pandavas, in their stillness, began to glow with a different energy, one that came from knowing they were fighting for something greater than land, for dharma. Each warrior prepared differently. Some prayed silently, others sharpened their weapons, polished their armor, whispered to loved ones in memory. Others still, like Bhima, cracked their knuckles and laughed. "Let them come," he bellowed, voice booming. "Let their drums drown in the blood they spill." Duryodhan, standing atop his golden chariot, surveyed the formation. "Is this not glory?" he shouted to his brothers. "Today we write history in steel and fire." But inside, something stirred. Bhishma's call had given him joy, yes, but also reminded him of something he didn't want to admit. Even legends can fall. He looked at Bhishma again. The old man sat calm, his fingers resting gently on the conch. Was that a shadow behind his eyes? Annoying? In contrast, Krishna remained still. The more noise came from the Kaurava side, the quieter he became. For he knew, sound fades, dharma remains. As the trumpets screamed and drums battered the air, the battlefield began to shift. The dust clouded the sky. The sun dimmed just slightly, or so it seemed. To the mortals, this was war. But to the heavens, this was the gathering of karma. Gandharvas and Siddhas watched silently. The rishis in the forest paused their penance. Even the wind carried the scent of fate. Sanjaya described all this to Dhritarashtra. My king, your army shakes the field with fury. But the silence on the other side, it is divine. Arjuna watches, and Krishna he waits. Waits for what? The king asks, voice dry. For the moment, for the truth to rise above the noise. Meanwhile, children in nearby villages clung to their mothers, not knowing why the air itself felt heavy. The animals had retreated. The birds flew far from the sound. Even nature seemed to know something unearthly was coming. And then, silence. Not total. The drums still beat. The horns still blew, but the soul of the sound had faded. The roar had crested. Krishna raised his hand. And in that single motion, Arjuna knew. He blew his conch Devadatta with such clarity, such purity, that it cut through the noise like a blade of peace. One by one, the Pandava conches followed. Bhima's Pondra, Yudhishthira's Ananta Vijaya, Nakula's Sahadevas, and finally, the mighty Sughosa and Manipushpaka. But it wasn't the noise that struck fear into the Kauravas, it was what lived inside it. Resolve, dharma, divine will. Duryodhana's smile faltered, and Bhishma lowered his gaze, because even in all the sound his army made, he had heard what truly mattered. A war was coming, but it would not be decided by the noise of corns or the beating of drums. It would be decided by the silence that followed, by the choices, by the hearts of those who stood not for revenge, not for glory, but for truth.